All right, hey everyone, it's Aaron from websiteallstars.com. I want to bring you another quick video tutorial, this time on text shadows. On one of the other videos that I've done recently, I talked a little bit about text shadows very quickly, kind of just in passing, so I wanted to actually show you guys what those were and how to use them. So for a long time, everybody that needed shadows on any kind of text utilized Photoshop. Even if it was simple text and you wanted a shadow, you had to utilize Photoshop or something similar to get that effect. So what I want to talk about is how to utilize CSS to get the same result without having to utilize Dreamweaver. I'm sorry, without having to utilize Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and create two new files like I normally do. One index.html and one style.css. We'll link them together and get going. So I'm going to go to File, New. Go ahead and go to blank page, go to HTML. I use HTML5, which I encourage you guys to do as well, and I'll hit create. And I'll go to File, New. Go ahead and go to blank page, go to go to CSS and hit create. So I have two new files. I'm going to go ahead and save these files. So I'll go to File, Save As. Now I have some files and stuff here or some folders here from the different demos that I've created. So I have one for my text shadow files. I'm going to hit save to save the index file into there. And I'll go to File, Save As, and save my CSS file into that file as well. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and close the CSS file for now because I'm going to link these two together and the CSS file will become a dependent file. And Dreamweaver will give me access directly to it without having to have both files open. So the way that I typically do this is through the CSS Styles tab. Dreamweaver has it as far back as I can think of. I want to say back CS2, CS3 at least. But if you go over to the CSS Styles tab and go to the little Attach Style Sheet button, click it, browse for your file, and hit Open. This will link your file. Go ahead and hit OK, and you'll see it show up in the head part of your website or your web page. So since we're doing text shadow, I'm not going to really do much other than just add in like a H1 tag. So H1, go ahead and close it, and in the middle, I'll just put this is a title. So when I refresh over here in the design view, we're going to see that actual text. This is a title. By default, it's black. I'm going to change all that. I'm going to change the size and the color and things like that before we add a shadow to it. So that's all I need in the HTML. Let's go ahead and jump over to the CSS. Now for this, since most of the time I want my H1s to be consistent, I want them to show the same across the site. This whole idea of CSS, really, is to have that consistency from page to page. So I'm not going to create a specific class for it, although you could if you needed to. So I'm just going to do H1 for the selector. And let's add a couple properties. So let's start with things like font. We'll do font family. And we'll just use Arial for now. It's pretty Arial, Helvetica, Sans Serif font stack is fine. Let's do font size. And I'm going to do like, I don't know, 80 pixels. I know a lot of people like M's. Let's do something smaller. M's are fine if you want to use them. That's not what this is about. I'm focusing specifically on the text shadow piece. Let's go ahead and add a color to it. Since a shadow has to be visible, I recommend using a lighter color if you're going to use a shadow in most cases. Now, obviously, that rule doesn't always apply, but if I'm using black text, a shadow is just going to make it look kind of blurry. It's not going to really add anything to it. So I'm going to use kind of like a light blue color. You can go like any color, really. I'll change it up. I'll do kind of like a yellowish color, I guess. Let's see how that goes. So this color is definitely not recommended on just a plain white background. It makes it a little bit hard to read, but if I want to pull it off that background, text shadow would be one way of doing that. So let's talk now about the text shadow. So I'm going to add a little comment in here. So you guys know what we're looking at. The text shadow property is pretty simple. It has multiple values, and I'm going to show you or explain what each value is. So let's start with just text hyphen shadow. Now there's multiple pieces to this. Like I said, there's multiple values. The first two of the four, there's four main ones that we're going to deal with. The first two are going to be the offset. That's going to be the offset. That's going to be how far left or right it's going to be, or how far up and down it's going to be. So what I usually start with is like 2 pixels by 2 pixels, or 2 pixels and 2 pixels. So the way that this works, the offset, the first value of the offset is the x axis. So right and left. Now if you think of like a typical quadrant, if you go to the right, that goes positive. That's a positive number. So if you want to move the shadow to the right, you want to use a positive number. Same thing goes if you want to move the shadow down, use a positive number. So if I'm doing 2 and 2, or 2 pixels and 2 pixels, it's going to go to the right 2 pixels, and it's going to go down 2 pixels. The third value is the blur. So if you compare this to Photoshop, the offset is kind of the distance element of it, and then the blur is the how much blur there is, how blurry that shadow is. So for the sake of seeing it, I'm going to start by doing like 5 pixels. And then for the color, I'm just going to use black for now. So I'll use just the simple hex color for black. Now if I refresh over here, let's go ahead and save this, and then refresh over here and turn live view on, you should see a shadow here. Now I want to kind of illustrate what these different what these different values are for. So if I do the x coordinate, let's say I make it 20 pixels and refresh, you're going to see that it goes really far over to the right. Set that back to 2. And if I set the y to 20 pixels, you'll see that it drops down really, really low. Just so we can see it, I'm going to leave the y-axis, or the y-coordinate there, and then let's change this to like, now we'll do 20 pixels. What you'll see is it's very, very blurry. So those are the 3 main pieces, and then we choose the color. What I found to work quite often is something a little bit more simple, like 1 pixel. Oops. By 1 pixel, and then a blur that's not too bad. So something like this, and that helps stand off just enough that it breaks it up and makes it a little bit easier to read, but it's also not blurry, because if you start making the blur value too strong, it becomes a little bit hard to see. Even at 5, that's not horrible. It depends on what the background is, really. But I see people that kind of overdo this. Now another thing to think about is this color. You can choose pretty much any color. So let's say I wanted something like orange. The background, or that text shadow color, can be pretty much anything. So if you wanted to kind of work into a color scheme you're using or something like that, that would be perfectly fine. That would work. So that's really it. That's all I wanted to cover. The only other thing I would add to this probably would be that you might want to do something with vendor-specific variations of this. So let's go back to just black. And if you copy this, the two that I see that sometimes will cause an issue that have vendor-specific properties are for Mozilla Firefox and WebKit, which is Safari and Chrome. So if you do dash MOZ dash and then the text dash shadow or dash WebKit dash text dash shadow, that should cover your bases for older browsers of Firefox and older versions of the WebKit browsers. So that is it. That's all I wanted to cover. I hope you guys have found this useful. Please visit websiteallstars.com. I would love for you guys to subscribe to this channel, like or share this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching.